So hi everyone. Today I will trying to explain you how I write recursive functions. I figured out that most of the folks are not able to understand what is recursion. So in this video, I will try to explain you how you can write recursive functions and how you need to think it as loops and how you can convert the same loop into a recursive function as well. So let's get started. So I will be explaining you with two examples. The first example is to check a number whether it is prime or not. So in this case, the logic that I'm following is that I'm declaring a number and then factor equals to number minus one. Now eventually I'm decrementing that factor value one by one and I'm checking with every value whether the actual number num is divisible by that factor or not. If at any point I find the number to be divisible, I call it a non-prime. Else, if factor reaches one, I call it prime. Simple as that. So, in case of recursion, there are two things that I keep in my head. I think recursion to be a while loop with the condition true always on, as you can see in this first case, right? So, when you are having while true, these are infinite loops. Now, to come out of an infinite loop, you need to think of a break strategy. You need to come to a terminal state by your own in terms of logic. Similarly, in case of recursion, also you need to think of a terminal state first of all. What will be my terminal state? So, if you look the recursive function for the same prime number thing, the whole logic remains the same. If you see that if elif, in case of break, we are putting a return statement now, right? We won't be breaking out of the function because you can't break out of a function. You can return from a function. You need to break from a loop. So recursive functions are basically you can consider them to be while loops with true condition always on. So you need to figure out terminal states from where you can start returning. First thing. Second thing is that how to move ahead. So in this particular case, what you're doing is that you are doing a factor minus one once the two terminal state conditions are not fulfilled. The same thing you need to do here, but in terms of a return, call the same number and do the decrement when you're passing the parameter itself. These are the two things that you need to consider while writing a recursive function. So first of all, whenever you're trying to write a logic, think it as a while loop with true condition always on. In that case, you need to think of two things. One is to how to decrement or increment the value variable that you're using for the loop, and eventually what are the terminal states. So terminal states, in case of a while loop, you would be using a break once you reach a terminal state. In case of a recursive function, you would be using a return function, a return statement. And for incrementing or decrementing your variable, you can pass when you are passing the parameter of the function, you need to do that there itself. That's the only two difference between a while loop with true condition on and a recursive function. So if you don't believe me, we can follow our next example also. So this example is basically to swap alphabets within a string. So if I have been given a string A B C D E F G, I want to swap odd indexed alphabets with even indexed alphabets. Easy. So this is the first case where I've written the whole thing in the case of a while loop with true condition on. Again, think of recursion to it while loop with true conditions on. So in this case, you need to think of a terminal state again. So the terminal state is when you reach the end of the string, right? End of the string means that when your index has reached is greater than equal to the length of the string minus one straight away, right? In this case, you will do a break. Now, if you look into the recursive function for the same loop, in case of a break statement, we are returning the whole string. What we are printing here, I am returning that whole string. So it's a difference between break and return. That's it. Now the second condition is that we are applying a logic. If the terminal state is not valid, then we are applying a logic of swapping. I'm not going into the swapping thing, and then I'm doing an increment in the index plus equals to 2, because what I'm doing is that I'm first of all going to the first index, swapping them, and then skipping the next index and then jumping onto the alternate index. So first I'll jump to A, then C, then E, then G. This is the logic. Because two consecutive alphabets, I am swapping them at one go. So here also you are doing the same thing, but the increment here is done to the variable directly. In this case, we'll be again calling the swap function, and the parameter that we have passed index will be doing an increment while calling the function. So these are the two things that you need to keep in head. The output is same while writing a recursive function. So any logic you wish to write, think it as a while loop with true condition on. Then think of the break conditions that you will use to come out of this infinite loop, and then think of the increment or decrement you're doing to the variable for implementing the logic. Now the break condition becomes a return statement in swap, in a recursive function, and the increment or decrement that you're doing becomes a recursive call that you're doing here, where you're updating the parameter that you're passing to the function, and eventually you're calling a return function on that also. That's it. That's how you can write recursive function very easily.